If you can only have one whiskey brand for the rest of your life, what would it be? Now, that's an interesting question. But once you start really thinking about it, it's a lot harder than you think. So what would be my choice? Let's find out. Let's go. Welcome back to Old Fashioned Ways Plus Plus. I'm Doc Martinez, and my buddy Tom over at Bourbon Jerk was challenged with this question. If he could choose only one whiskey brand for the rest of his life, what would he choose? I found this question very intriguing for sure. So if you want to know what his answer was, I will leave a link to his video in the description below. Now, as you first start listening to this, you probably thought the same thing I did in the beginning. Like the large brands like Buffalo Trace. But Buffalo Trace is a distillery and not really a brand. If you chose this, for example, you would only be drinking Buffalo Trace bourbon, maybe a store pick, plus they have a Buffalo Trace experimental series and Kosher. But it would not include the BTAC, Weller, or Blantons to name a few. So this is where it becomes interesting. I had to come back to my cantina back here and look at different brands to help me make this decision. So of course there are a few brands to take into consideration. Bardstown, with all those choices, the Solid Discovery series and the new ones coming out getting better and better, that would be a great choice. New Riff is another solid brand with some great options. Plus I have always enjoyed their single barrels, and they also produce some amazing finished whiskeys for a good price. Found North has started to increase in popularity with a lot of single barrels, and their special releases with high age statements. Some of them can be hit or miss for me, some of them I really like, and some I don't. Barrel bourbon is another one with so many options and variety. That could be a perfect one as well. Now, we can't forget something like Evernorth, with Dan and Sean buying barrels, blending them, and making some great whiskey, doing some fun stuff with those barrels. This was a strong contender for me as well. Then one of my favorite pours, Stag. This would not be a bad choice, but it would limit me on varieties. Pappy Van Winkle seems like it'd be a good choice too, but I have not had enough of them to commit to them either. Now, there are distilleries that are also brands. Wild Turkey, Tom Black's favorite. Four Roses with 10 different bourbon recipes. Maker's Mark with the regular Maker's 46, the Finishing series, and some older releases as well. Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, Mixtures, Redwood Empires, and all of those would be solid choices as well. Penelope has a lot of variety and special releases as well, but also hit and miss for me. Now, Jack Daniel's. Jack Daniel's is another solid choice, especially like with their Jack Daniel's single barrel strength available everywhere. Also a great pour is their 10, 12, and 14-year releases, but somewhat hard to get. But those are some of my favorite pours. So Jack would definitely be a high contender for me. Now, these were just a few bottles that I looked at in my cantina that I have multiples from. So those were, and that's why I kind of started looking at those and really thinking about this. So I need a drink after all that. Made me thirsty, but also there's a lot of choices, and it's a very, very tough decision when you start thinking about it in that aspect. I'm drinking what I decided to choose. This is what's in my glass. So if you think you know what it is, stop the video or pause it for a second. Go down below and put in the comments below what you think my choice was. After a lot of thought and consideration, I had to ask myself, which brand do I see myself going to the most? Which brand would give me a lot of choices and variety that my palate really enjoys? The brand I am choosing falls into the distillery, but is also a brand category. It is also the brand I have the most bottles of, and also the most different types of bottles. So have you guessed it? Have you guessed the brand that I would choose? Well, the brand I would choose is Still Austin. Yep, Still Austin. It is a Texas whiskey, has plenty of variety, constantly putting out new banger after banger. They have a large selection, and it's also a pour that I can enjoy as a daily sipper like I'm doing right now. They also have options for more complex pours like Tanninger, Rare Stock, with a master distiller like John Chappell and master blender Nancy Fraley teaming up to make some of the most memorable whiskeys from Texas and from the US, in my opinion. There are many great brands out there, and this was a hard decision. Let me know in the comments below, what did I leave out? What other brand should I have considered? And also, which brand have you chosen? Which brand, after thinking all that and going through that whole complex, and it's very, very difficult, which one would you have chosen? I really enjoyed this question, found it intriguing, found that I had to really think to go through this, go through a process, kind of look at the things I have, what do I have on my shelves, kind of narrow it down, and narrow it down to what I chose is Still Austin. So I want to ask a few of my friends out there, if you had only one whiskey brand for the rest of your life, which would you choose? I want to challenge Brandon and Mary of Poor Decisions Pairing, Whiskey Shaman, because all the crazy stuff he has, I'm very curious if he could actually narrow it down. He likes a lot of those craft whiskeys, you know, malt whiskeys and stuff. So could he narrow it down? I think this would be a tougher decision for him than it even was for me. And then also Troy and Laura from Baker Drinks, because I'm very curious, would they choose the same thing? Well, my friends, thank you for joining me on another journey down my whiskey rabbit hole. To our next journey, my friends, cheers.